Boy, howdy. If you're a 100 Thieves fan, you know without a doubt that things are looking up in the esports world. Can I get a
run it up?
Run it up. Let's go. I think you're muted, Jordan. And it's not on my side for once.
Oh. Well, Cole, I had a great reaction. Check out the VOD later.
Do it again.
Jordan reacts to Cole's intro.
Yeah. Man. Yeah, things are looking up, everybody. There's no problems or anything that we need to talk about in any esport, which is great. It makes the show super smooth and positive and easy. So welcome on in. This is Hunter Talk. We talk about, on this show, we talk about League of Legends. And while we could talk about the wonderful things happening in Call of Duty also, I think we'd run out of time. So we're just going to focus on the excellence in League of Legends. Hey, let's be honest. It's not that bad, all right?
For League?
Yeah, it's not that bad. But it certainly ain't good, and we certainly got a lot to talk about. So,
well, it's just weird.
It is weird. That's the thing. That's more than anything else. It's just weird.
Yeah. Which, hey, I think, in my opinion, Cole, weird is better than bad. So I'll take that. That's an upgrade. It feels like an improvement. Some of the most measured tweets I've seen, hats off to the measured tweeters out there, you know who you are, have been about how this is just sort of weird, right? The blue check folks, the blue check crowd with this is kind of weird take. It's good. I like it. Keep that energy up. Tim, Oracle's Elixir, I'm looking at you. Your what take wasn't it's weird. Always a measured fellow. And
measured tweet gang, baby. He
said, let's not fall prey to hyperbole here. This is where we thought they would be, but it is weird. It's a weird route that we've taken to this very shiny 4th place ribbon.
Yeah. Again, we don't read chat on this show as a policy, but Coco Kid has said could be worse. We could be Golden Guardians. To a Shieldy Top said we kind of are though. Oh man. So it's just this permanent state of being good enough to not be bad, but not good enough to make worlds. And, you know, it's better than being in that bad portion of the standings, but it ain't the goal. And if you've read any 100T staffers tweets lately, you'll read a lot about goals and expectations, and we've so much to learn from this split, and we're going to be better next split and make our goal of making worlds. There's enough of that positivity to run around the whole 100 Thieves fandom.
I'm going to hit you with a real quick hot take. Cool. Start us off with a hot take.
Wow.
I've been to Worlds once. I don't know if you know this about me as a fan. Worlds fan, certified, 2018. I'm not in a huge rush to go back to Worlds. To be real honest.
You remember how it went?
Look, Worlds is not a place you want to go if you're not ready for Worlds. I don't think we're ready for Worlds. I don't want to squeak in as the 3rd squeaky wheel on the LCS tricycle and be just devastated by the World's caliber competition. We're not ready yet. I don't want to get there until I feel like we're ready. This is not the look. This is not our final form. I don't want to get there too soon. It doesn't do well for the long-term prospects of the organization. I want to go with people having said, this is at least the 3rd best team in the LCS. And I think that any team, this is not unique to us, any team can fall prey to this. I think it's pretty common for the 3rd seed to go and people to clown them for not deserving to be there. So Worlds is interesting, man. Yeah, of course it's your goal. You want to be there, but you also, it's not only upside once you get to Worlds. You can show up and people can say, who let these clowns into the party?
Yeah, which, you know, I'm not going to lie, is part of the reason why I always say what I want is a domestic title. That's really what I want. And I've been saying that for a long time now, and there's good reason why. But hey, we're not here to talk about domestic titles because guess what? We are no longer in contention for one of those. I will say before we dive in for real, this is not the episode where we give the full, here's what happened this split, and here's what we need to do for next split. So we're not doing the whole off-season pod here. We will do that maybe in a week, maybe in a couple weeks. So that's not what this is. This is going to be probably a little shorter than usual. We're going to talk about the series, about a couple general topics, and about the apparel drop. And we're just going to be out of there so we can have some time to kind of stew on everything and think about what we really want for the direction going forward. Now, naturally, we're going to come across some of those topics. It's just going to happen. We're going to talk about Ryoma and Damonte. We're going to talk about Ssumday. We're going to talk about the coaches. You know, like that's going to happen, of course. But this is not going to be the final 100 Talks say on those issues.
Yeah, this is not our summer 2021 preview pod. We'll get there. We'll talk about off season. We got plenty of time to talk about it. We should also say, Cole, that this show is recorded, and you may or may not be listening to a recording of the show. We also do this show live on twitch.tv. It is a website that you can go to and watch us live. You can chat with people in the chat. You can spam our emotes if you want to. So if you're listening to this and you have something to say, why not listen to us live? We're usually live 8:30 p.m. on Mondays. A little early today, special day. But please pop by Twitch, say what's up. If you're watching on YouTube, pop by Twitch. Also, we're powered by something. It's Rip It Energy Fuel.
Rip It Energy Fuel. I'm drinking Tribute tonight. You've got the Citrus X. It's an appropriate flavor.
I had an energy drink earlier, so I had put water in my cup tonight, Cole. But I never am far away from Rip It, so you know.
Yeah, it would not be wise to ever be far away from Rip It. So, okay. Well, with that said, with all those particulars given, let's go ahead and start talking about some stuff. So,
okay.
The TSM series that we just witnessed. Prophet Cole predicted a 3-1 loss. Jordan, what did Heretic Jordan predict? What was that?
Malevolent end of the spectrum. I predict the same, Cole. So if that makes me a heretic, I fear to know what it makes you, friend. I think I go first now. Just let the record show. I do go first, you guys. So you can't say that I'm on the Prophet Cole copy train.
It's true.
It's not how it works.
Even though you should be if you knew what was good for you.
Yeah, and sometimes he does text me beforehand to let me know what he'll predict so that I can do the same thing if I want to look smart that week. It's a good arrangement. Find yourself a prophet to make you look better in your picks too. It's a good deal.
Yeah. But anyway, this series starts at the draft, and I thought it was. I had a very difficult time sorting out my feelings about the drafting this weekend. One of the main reasons why is because we did some goofy stuff in the first two games. All right. Really the first three, but especially the first two. And I thought it was goofy and I thought it was weird. And I was kind of wondering, I wonder why we're doing this. And then I remembered that I had done a podcast not too long before that saying like, hey, why are we trying to play standard against a team who can play standard better than us? Shouldn't we do something goofy? And then I felt ashamed. So here I sit, not sure what to make of what we did this weekend. Jordan, shall we start at the Jayce pick maybe, or what? What do you?
Yeah, it feels like a fine place to start. That's part of the draft. I had a similar kind of conflicted feeling, right? Of saying, let's get weird with it. And then seeing us get weird with them, like, I don't know if that weird is what we're going for. That maybe is too weird. But yeah, I feel like, top of the rift is Jayce, Cole. That's where he hangs out. Should we start there?
Yeah. Ssumday has had, I think, one good game on Jayce that I can remember in his 100 Thieves career. It might be more than that, but it might just be one. Certainly in the last year and a half or so, there's only been one. And so I wasn't completely confident in the pick, especially because his lane opponent is someone who has habitually played Jayce and has habitually proven more effective on that particular champion during NA. So I wasn't totally comfortable with it, shall we say. There's that whole thing that comes along with picking Jayce, which is you better win early, right? Like that's the line about Jayce. I am a I am a bronze caliber League of Legends analyst, and I can tell you that that's the line about Jayce.
Yeah.
And maybe on paper, that's not such a bad bet, though, because the story, the prediction, the analyst angle from this series was like, hey, you know what? TSM just flat out has a better mid to late game than 100T does. We actually are kind of more similar than we probably want to admit in terms of how the teams play. Maybe we don't send 4 men to top or bot side as often as they do.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that later. That's a teaser. But yeah, so we do things in a very similar way, only they tend to have a better mid to late game. So is it prudent to pick on something that focuses on the early game and maybe get us an early advantage? Perhaps.
Yeah, you know, let's just say it. This isn't our favorite topic. We say it every time we talk about the draft. Anytime we come near the draft, we talk about this. Some people feast on draft discussion, Cole. They love to talk about why it is or isn't the biggest problem in the entire game. The game was lost before they even loaded in, et cetera, et cetera. I'll just say this. I think we won the early game. And by some approximations, we won the early mid game. It seemed to be, Cole, that as soon as the game entered the team fight stage, we just had nothing. We had nothing.
Yeah.
It was like once everybody agreed to kind of leave the finely defined confines. It's a lot of fines in one sentence. You hear that? My rapper?
Finely defined confines.
Of the early game with the lanes, it all went to pot because people weren't giving Jayce his appropriate spacing to set out his, shock blast pylons and hit the empowered move. They just jumped on top of us. They had an Orianna. They had actual team fighting abilities. They have a Rel in this game one. It's like it had a Gnar. We just couldn't keep them where we wanted them to stand to line up our poke and our long range damage. And so I feel like it started to fall apart pretty quickly. And this is a good time for me to remind you that Ssumday had great Gnar games in the previous series here against Dignitas. So it felt like a 180. We swung all the way.
But in to a counterpoint, before that series, he had not had good Gnar games. He had pretty dang stinky Gnar games.
Yeah, but I play the hot hand.
This split.
Play the hot hand though. He's always been so. Look, we'll get into the broader discussion here about the merits of this, the potential merits, the demerits. It just seemed like a weird pick here to one, not draft any engage tools. But that's more broad team comp issue. But the specific to the Jayce, it's like Ssumday has had one of his worst splits with us. And so that's weird. And then the last series, he actually seemed to come back to life a little bit, had some great Gnar games. He was clearly feeling comfortable on the champ. And just, Gnar is not, I'm guessing Gnar is not the only champ he would have performed at a high level on had we given him a different champion. I think you look more at what the prototype of that champion is. What is the mold of Gnar? Team fighting, right? You show up, you ult 4 people into a wall, and they are CC'd for like 6.5 minutes. So it was weird to see us go so far away from that. We basically gave him a champion which has the potential to really dominate in lane, get strong, but then if things don't go right, doesn't have a lot of tools to make up for it.
Yeah. Cusino in chat actually pointed out that Ssumday has 14 Jayce games in his career, which for a career that long isn't really a lot. His win percentage is 35.7%. So not the most success on there, though. That will be skewed by his 100T tenure. And Cusino also says his KD is 1.6, which is one of his lowest on any champion. So there's some stats to be pulled about the Jayce play by Ssumday, which is a little surprising that it's kind of that bad. And again, fair point that 100T will skew that data a tiny bit. But yeah, so 14 14 picks on that champion. That's not a lot for someone with his breadth of experience. We tried it.
8 to 10 Renekton picks this split, but
dude,
he's got
yeah, right. Yeah, just this split. And dude, the thing is, I mean, I hate to say it, but you could tell TSM made that the focal point. And not only did TSM give a lot of attention to Ssumday, as they should, but Ssumday just kind of was back to his slumping tactics where he's kind of getting killed a lot. And sometimes you wonder if it was really necessary. Only he's like running the calculations in his head, but just dying over and over again. Sometimes at really, really key times in these games, and we throw away whatever advantage we built. And I mean, we did better in the first game than in the second at building that early game advantage. Still managed to throw away the advantage both times. So one would wonder, Jordan, if perhaps the team did not know how to play this strategy as well as you would have liked them to know how to play the strategy.
It is a fair point of surmisal, Cole. And I think
if surmisal is a word, everybody take an extra drink.
It's not, but take one anyway. Sip your rips. Yeah. I mean, hey, look, it was a different look, you know? So in that sense, I was glad to see us run a different comp.
Same here.
Entirely. I actually asked somebody I was watching while I was via virtual communication, says it's a new patch. Like, where are we getting all these picks from? It felt like there was a major shift in the meta based on what we drafted. But you know, I think that's the other downside of Jayce is he doesn't have a ton of escape tools, right? He isn't. You think back to last week, Ssumday had one of his all-time great escapes. On the Gnar, you know, jumping and transforming and hulking out and all that. So you know, self-healing, like he went crazy. So I think that what we've learned is that's kind of his play style, right? Get a split push going or just soak pressure in lane. And I think there's probably a reason we haven't seen him play a ton of Jayce in his career. It's just not the champion to do that with, right? Split pushing, granted, but you do not have the ability to hit your escape button and suddenly work a miracle, surviving a situation you have no right to survive. And we saw him not survive a lot of those situations, at least in this game one.
Yeah.
So.
Now, when we're talking about kind of unusual drafts for us, we would need to mention the mid lane picks in game 1 and 2. Actually, no, wait, one more point. You talked about how you liked to see the Jayce pick when it came out. Let me ask you this. Did you like seeing it in game 2 when it came out?
No.
What about game 3?
No.
Which we won though. So it's right. It's the truth. No, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of felt weird to do the same thing over and over again. But maybe it's one of those things where it's like, hey, we've got the winning setup here. We just have to execute it properly. We just have to execute. And I said, okay, well, we didn't know how to execute well enough. Speaking of not knowing how to execute well enough, one of our other goofy picks, this is the point I was going to make at the beginning of this, was in the mid lane, right? Where we decided that we're going to switch things up and put Ryoma on Marksmen for game 1 and game 2. Hey, again, I said funky stuff I'm okay with right now. Let's try some funky stuff and see what happens.
Let's get weird.
Let's get weird with it. And we did, and it didn't really work. I do have one thing about this. First of all, I got into a friendly dispute in our Discord with someone about Ryoma's play on the Lucian because I kept continually pointing out that, you know what Ryoma did really well on the Lucian was the split push. I mean, he was really dedicated to that. He took a bot in him at a very critical time. And then like minutes later, he was on top side, taking tier 2 tower. He set up split push very well in that, which I thought was great. Does that mean he played a great game all around? No, it does not at all. And that's kind of what the dispute was about, that just because I pointed out the one thing he did well doesn't save the whole pick. And I thought there were a couple crucial mistakes, especially in the Lucian game, where there was one instance where he died, I think right before was it right before the third dragon maybe that he died and basically the whole game flipped from there. Another time was I might be messing up the time, but there was a very costly death timing that probably didn't need to happen. And then there was also a right before a dragon fight, he kind of prematurely threw out the culling at just like this awful time and basically whiffed everything, and it was too early, and then we didn't have the ult and we couldn't really threaten. So there were just a couple things where the execution from Ryoma on that champion were not up to par, even though there were a couple things that he did do well. Of course, specifically talking about Lucian at this moment. So any observations from you on the Lucian game before we talk about the Trist?
I thought he did I'll say I'll answer your question directly first. I'm not going to dodge that. I thought his laning was actually quite strong. That is a champion who has the ability to be very oppressive in lane. And I think Ryoma delivered on that in a large way. He was getting really good trades consistently. CS was strong. And
let's remember, he's playing against someone whose reputation is a lane control mid laner.
PoE.
Yeah.
Look, roll the tape, go back to last season. We have said consistently. Now, last season, what it came down to is he didn't generate pressure. Even if he could hold his own, he was just holding, right? And there's Niski would constantly roam. He would like other champions, other mid laners who were better than him were unlocked to influence the map and exert that pressure. And he just never got to that point. And we've talked about this. We don't need to go back into it, but he just wasn't able to do that. I think a lot of it had to do with the overall composition of that roster, right? So let's consider that for what it is. He did a good job in this game, specifically on Lucian, getting good trades, pressuring PoE, making him at least think about lane phase, and he couldn't just take it off. So I think there's probably a version of that game where we dedicate a little bit more attention to the laning phase for mid, and there's some decent shots there to get a gank in on mid, which we don't do. That's not part of our game
that
plan.
Is not in our playbook at all.
So not to say that we should expect it, but he did his job in a lot of ways. There are you've mentioned, called out the mistakes he's made, and that's the other thing I said to you is Ryoma is the guy who's going to make mistakes. Right. He isn't that steady state, never like a PoE who is much less likely to make unforced errors in a game, which is why I think he's considered by everyone to be above Ryoma in the power rankings for mid. And I think that's fair, right? Of course. So, but it's a different job for him. We put him on a different thing. I think he played it really well. And it did exert pressure on the map. The split push was very effective. There were some costly trades in there, but when you have our composition, again, going back to this broader comp thing, we didn't really have a shot at 5v5, right? This is not a composition that you engage in a 5v5 team fight in and hope to win. And the game plan must have been, we'll just be ahead to a certain degree, to such a degree that the 5v5s don't really matter that much, or we get so much pick damage on them that they aren't able to take a 5v5, right? That's a gamble you take. And I think before I forget, the other thing I want to say is you don't get to both ask or expect your staff, your coach specifically, to try or do something and then flame them for doing it. Right?
Yeah.
So I do want to make that super clear, because we said it, and I think that widely this was a fan perspective, right? Is let's not just be worse at executing the strategies that other teams are. Specifically the top three, right? We kind of learned that lesson against C9. We're not going to out standard them. And my perspective on this, I think we just swung too far the other way. I think our team is good enough. We have enough good players who are genuinely competitive in their matchups, and in some cases can consistently win those matchups in lane and with their counterpart, that I think minor tweaks is more what's needed. Like, I don't think you need to completely flip things upside down and go for something that nobody's ever seen before. But like, how does it look if we play standard with Lucian mid, right? But you keep some engage tools, so that you can still pull off a team fight if you need to. And for me, that's the question I'm left with. Is we saw a lot of different things tried in a lot of different positions. We talked about top and mid so far. And I think the consensus is, we'd say, it seemed to work better in mid than it did in top with Jayce. But unfortunately, when you try new things everywhere, and I think when you forget a few key ingredients like engage, it's harder to say, was this a good idea or not? I mean, I think it doesn't change the fact that it was a bad idea, because we lost those 2 games pretty predictably. They were close, but it didn't feel like we had a shot realistically from mid game on.
Yeah. The game 2 pick, the Shurstana, was kind of more of the same, right? Like, seemed to do well in lane. A couple of costly mistakes. Gold Star moment, he had a 6 solo kill. I think was it on PoE in game 2?
It was lost.
Or it was lost. Yeah, you're right. I think it was on lost. That's right. Really sick solo kill. Like, I thought that was excellent. But there were also, rocket jumps that didn't work out, and there was a general inability to know what to do after we got through that laning phase, and man, I think what we said last year on Ryoma was one of the observations that we made about him, at least, was how he didn't seem to see us as well. Like, it's like these are like the parts that are easier to teach, so you should be able to coach someone up in that respect. And I did feel like this series, I was like, okay, like, not sure how much of a problem that is anymore. I don't think before this series he was winning every lane. Like, it's not like that. But I thought his lane phases looked good. Even when he was on the Orianna, it looked even better, I think. So it's like he fixed that part. And we used to say, and then he'll be like chucking out a lot of damage in the team fights and everything. So and that sometimes didn't happen in this series, but the whole thing about like what to do after we get out of lane phase seemed like a major question that he had not solved. It didn't seem like, and this is a team-wide problem. This is not just a Ryoma problem. But it just seemed like we didn't know what we were doing and what our game plan was from that point. And then we would just take the losing team fights. So perhaps that's the final piece of the puzzle for him to be like a mainstay LCS starting caliber player, is to figure out what to do once you get beyond the lane. And maybe that'll improve with a different team, with a different roster or a different team. I don't know, but it was just kind of interesting to watch that and think about how far he's come in terms of lane phase and be like, that's not so much the problem anymore. It's really just decision making in the mid and late game. It's really tough, man. Especially because, I make no secret about this. I like him so much personally. Just like I like his energy. I like him as a person, and it's sad to see stuff not working out for him. But just a couple of really good early games that just kind of went nowhere. Yeah.
I mean, I think that the thing I pick up on the most is what you said. It's a team issue. And I do think that in these first 2 games, at least, it wasn't even that. I think we just didn't really have a clear post lane phase plan, other than be so far ahead that the plan is just to continue to, kill them wherever we find them on the map, or split push, like that was the missing piece to me. And we'll talk more about Ryoma in the future, in a future podcast. We haven't talked about him on control mages. I feel like we probably want to spend a ton of time there.
No, and we don't want to spend a ton of time on anything because the pod is flying by at this point, and we have to do more abbreviated version of the show tonight. But that's the other thing. The other piece of this that I thought was weird, because I was trying to reconcile the whole, I mentioned it earlier and then you just mentioned it a few minutes ago. We asked for the team to get a little funkier and we got our wish, right? So there was that piece, and I was reconciling that with, what, Jordan, why was Ryoma put in over Damonte? What do you remember?
Why was he put in over Damonte?
What was the line? What was the PR line?
Control mages, right? Like,
so we...
and he's doing well in Academy. Yeah.
Right. But like he plays control mages a little bit better than Damonte. It wasn't even like drastic, right? It was like, no, he plays a little bit better, we thought. So we're going to try him out there. So in our most crucial series, it was kind of weird to see him starting off 2 games without playing a control mage, because this is like the stated purpose of bringing him in. So again, reconciling that piece with, but we do need to try some funky stuff. Didn't really work. Well, you put him on Orianna, and the dude looked pretty good. I mean, I know that some of those shockwaves weren't the best, but other than that, man, the lane phase looked really good. Into a Nazir both times, and right, am I not mistaken? Both times Nazir.
Yeah.
And
so.
I generally thought he did look pretty good on the Orianna pick, and in the second 2 games, I had less to fault him for than I did in the first games. And I wouldn't even. We'll talk about this too, but I wouldn't even call him our worst player, in this series. So. I thought the Orianna was actually pretty decent.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is why we brought him in. He has a better mastery of control mages. We'll call it whatever you want to call it. That's what they said. And certainly, in a couple of Damonte's last games, there were games where he just wasn't effective on control mages. So that matches up to me. I have no reason to doubt that. I think they got that one right. Personally, I'm not opposed because, and I think I saw Tom Shu in chat mention this, but like assassins, right? He's got a rich history of playing assassins. So he's not a one-dimensional player when it comes to what he can play, or at least what he likes to play. Whether or not he can play those at an LCS caliber level is another story. But I think it's kind of like it's a safe thing, and it brings to our team a degree of control, which and engage, which is sorely lacking in a lot of these, right? We're completely dependent on FBI's Ashe Arrow and a lot of this to really start things off. And as a result, what we ended up doing was we just got a lot of picks, not much else. And maybe I just segued us on accident.
No, it's okay. Let's see, because we got to go to. I want to let you talk about Ashe for a second.
Yeah, you want to do a quick hit on these last couple?
Do a quick hit on Ashe, then I've got something, then we'll do the last thing there.
Okay. All right. So here's my thought on Ashe. New look, again, getting weird. There we go. Like I said, every position. We'll see what we get, right? And I just the only thing I could think coming away from watching this champ is, one, I don't think it's aggressive enough. Like, I don't think this is an aggressive enough champion for FBI. He wants to be in the middle of things. There's a reason that Kai'Sa is such a dangerous champion in his hands. The repositioning, the in their face, that's
mobility,
I think what he really on mobility. Having any mobility in the kit.
He's got two, he's on Kai'Sa. He's got 2 mobility spells, right? He's got the ult, and then he's also got the E that speeds you up.
Yeah, and Ezreal, which was our 1 win. Plenty of mobility in that kit, and let's I think the Ashe, while it might be a strong champ, it's been pretty consistently meta. It's good enough in almost a lot of these different patches to be viable. I thought it was the least dangerous FBI we've seen this entire split, and I think his stat line reflected it, and I think his play reflected it too. And for that reason, I'd say, again, I think FBI is in a pretty good. I don't know that we need to get weird with him. I think he's good. He is our guy who you put him on a standard meta pick, and there's a very good chance that he nearly wins you the game on his own. If other people show up, this guy is going to threaten to beat the other team. Yeah. There will be a fight where he gets 3 to 4 kills, and that turns things. So I felt like the Ashe was so flat in his hands, because that's not the type of he's not the hyper carry, right? He wants to go in on his 2-item power spike and obliterate them. He's not looking to build to the point where he can methodically work his way through a team fight and then stroll down mid lane to win the game. So I didn't like that look, and I think that was a bit of a tactical mistake to try to change the way FBI shows up in these matches. I don't think it was needed, and I don't think it worked. So I was really glad to see him, even back on the Ezreal, to see him on a champion we've seen him on before. Again, just so much more pressure possible when he's on that kind of a champ.
Yeah, totally agree. And just not forget to mention that you got to land some of those arrows.
You got to land some of the arrows.
You got to land some of those arrows. Had a lot of misses there.
Yep.
He was not exactly Robin Hood mode. Okay, just a quick thing about draft. I did this for this series. I put a poll out again in the Dignitas series where I asked people like the draft, and then I realized I wanted to experiment with this more. So in every game of the series, I put out, did we like the draft poll on Twitter? Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to read these out to you because I thought it was interesting. Game 1, 64. Well, I'll round. 64% liked it. 36% did not. Okay. Game 2, which was basically the same exact draft. 38% yes, 62% no. So basically flip-flopped. Now, if this depends on which school of analysis you're in, right? Because if you're an LS disciple, you're just talking about the draft, right? Is this on paper the best, or a favorable matchup versus these players on these picks against this team on these picks, right? That's a different kind of calculus, right? So to me, this tells me that most people are on that second option of analysis where we tried it and it didn't work. So let's do something different, right? Because there was a flip-flop there. Instead of, no, this is the way League of Legends should be played kind of draft. Anyway, game 3, 65% yes and 35% no on do we like the draft. And then in game 4, we had 73.5% yes, they liked it, and 26.5% no. And we, of course, lost that game. So weird fan opinions on drafting. It was hard to know. I think I tweeted after game 1, it's like according to my Twitter timeline, this is both the worst and best draft we've ever had, because that's what it felt like. And I'm not. I think the point is we just need to not worry about it because we don't know what we're talking about. I think that's probably the point.
And look, fans, don't feel bad because I feel like I've seen the exact same thing happen from professional paid analysts, people with jobs,
right.
Where they'll say that is a garbage draft and someone should be investigated, and the next guy will say we have a genius among us, right? Like somebody here is a drafting savant because unbelievable. And then it always comes down to which team won. And that person's like, told you. Yeah. Although I think a lot of the time it's not the draft specifically that decides the outcome of that. So draft is weird. It's the biggest armchair quarterback thing that you can be talking about, which is why I think we don't love to spend a lot of time talking about it.
But let's spend just another couple minutes because I did want to point one more thing out. Okay.
Okay. We're getting our
65% of people who responded, and this one had 136 votes. So 65.5% of you guys thought that we had the better draft in game 3. Mm-hmm. Here was the draft in game 3 for us, for our team comp. Just want to talk about our team comp. Jayce, Udyr,
love it. Yep.
Orianna, Ezreal, Leona. To me, this is like, which kind of draft were we going for? It's like we were going for the poke comp and then we switched, to the all-in comp, to the engage comp. To me, it was not clear which strategy we chose. When that Leona pick came through, especially, I was like, what are we, why are we drafting poke and then adding a Leona to the mix? Yeah. It felt super weird to me. And of course, that's the game we won.
Naturally.
That's the game we won. Draft. We won into Gnar, Nidalee, Azir, Jinx, Alistar. So let's just not talk about it for a while.
Let's take some time off.
Let's take some time off from draft because it clearly doesn't make sense It just clearly doesn't make sense. Okay. I believe you wanted to talk about one more specific player.
Yeah. I want to talk about Closer. He's been the focus of some conversation and some criticism the last several weeks. I'm going to make this quick. I thought he had a good series. He had a couple of really, really clutch steals.
He had like 3 in a single game, man. Jeez.
Yeah, it was game 2, I think. And then they stole the Baron.
And then Spica stole the Baron.
That hurts. So that was so close. He
Way
got
to
knocked
erase 3 steals from our jungler.
A fraction of a second after it freaking happened. So anyway, but he had a couple, like his pure jungling contributions in the sense of objective control and secure. Great. He's playing Lilia, which is not a champion I love him on. He played it twice,
not at all.
No surprise. Not at all. I think the only reason it looked like he had passable Lilia games in that was because he got those steals. But then he got the Udyr. And I think that champion looked as good as it did because it was a Cloud Soul Udyr. Kudos to us for securing the Cloud Soul, but basically just on it echoes of contracts as Olaf could not be stopped. Makes you think, do they not put a movement speed cap on the champions in this game because they should consider it? Looked goofy as all get out. Incredibly effective, couldn't be stopped. So, but it felt like a very solid series from him overall. I mean, in as much as he can on a champion that I would argue he's one of the least effective on. I don't know why we continue. Lily is good. I get it. In the meta, we like the champ. I don't like it when we play it. So, I just want to say that. I want to put that out there that I think he had a pretty strong showing, especially being a little shaky.
Yeah, he looked a lot better in this series than he has for the past little while, in my opinion, as well. So shout out to Closer. And then since it's the end of the season, we should also perma shout out FBI and Huhi for virtually never being a cause for concern. Huhi had a couple of games that weren't ideal, midway through the season, but other than that, they've just been plugging away, looking good in every game. So, the Ashe game didn't go so well for him, but this is more of the pick than him, right? Except for the missed holds, but. But I just, so we have never really had to spend a lot of time talking about them other than to sing their praises. And so I just thought it's appropriate to point that out, especially because now we're at the end of the split. So that being said, let's tackle, this is actually one general topic with a couple of facets that I want to hit just as something to keep in mind as we enter this off-season period and we get ready to recalibrate for another split of League of Legends. And along with another split comes the new storylines, right? And the new analysis, the new picks, the new power rankings,
the new adjective,
the new phrases that casters overuse. But the new narratives is the thing.
Firepower is a noun, isn't it? Firepower.
Yes, anyway. That is definitely a noun. The new narratives, guys. The new narratives. That's what I want to talk about. Narratives. So, how should I? If you don't believe in the power of narratives in this space, I do not know what to tell you, because I think as fans, we are crazy susceptible to them and we give them way too much credence. Think that my thesis is that we allow the narratives to crystallize super early, and then we are really, really, really reluctant to change them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Here are some things to consider. Here are some narratives. 100T. It's a dive team. We tower dive.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely was not true for the full split. It was very true in lock-in, and then it became less and less and less true. All right. That's a narrative, right? And that was still a narrative being repeated by the casters in this series. They were talking about 100T tower dives. It's we haven't really been those dudes in quite some time. that narrative expires, right? Here's another.
Does it?
Yeah, well, it should. That's my point.
Yeah.
Here's another narrative. 100T was really good early in the split. Kind of true, right? We at least got really good results. There were games where we looked very good. We certainly looked better during lock-in than we did probably for the rest of the split. So I agree with that from that sense. But again, first of all, we got reverse swept by C9 in the lock-in, which was very painful. And then after that, it was like we got worse and worse every week, and that started immediately, right? So is that narrative true? The early in the split thing, yeah. The problem is it sets the expectations for the rest of the split, right? So we let ourselves get so excited about the hot start that we fail to realize when we're no longer the hot team, but we don't adjust our expectations accordingly. Okay. Mm-hmm. Here's another narrative that might sound familiar to some of you. 100T benches players for no reason.
I don't know what you could be talking about.
That certainly is a narrative, right? I am of the opinion that I don't think that's ever been true. I know that you guys, like, there are many people who still talk about Meteos the first time around. We over and over and over again talked about that, about how that is not like what happened. If you follow any clues as to what happened, it was not Meteos got benched for no reason. Same with Cody Sun, right? It's never really been true. And this year, when we benched Damonte, I was like, stuck in this weird Prophet Cole thing where I got it exactly right. I predicted preseason which week he would get benched and swapped out for Ryoma. But at the time, I was like, I honestly think Damonte did enough to stick around and stay on the starting roster. I didn't actually agree with the roster switch when it happened. Not to claim that it was this drastic, like he's demonstrably better kind of thing. And the staff didn't approach it that way either. They said, if you go back and watch, it was like this very measured, we think he's a little bit better in this meta and with control mages. Like that's all they really said. But it blew up into Damonte got benched and he was the reason we were winning, right? Mm-hmm. He got benched for no reason. And so it's just the narrative gets out of control again. And we cannot shake these things, guys. We cannot shake these things. That's why we have to be, I think, like more vigilant about this stuff, because the narrative controls how the conversation is held for pretty much the entire year. Yeah. Jordan, you know what I'm going to go to next. So do you have anything you want to interject before I do that?
No, I think yes. I will add briefly that I understand why it happens. It's fun. It's fun to have like cool and fun and exciting narratives. It's more fun as a fan to believe that we're the best than to believe that we're fourth.
Yes.
We established that last week when I made my argument for telling the fans that be excited for this season. We're aiming for fourth, right? So of course it's not a new concept. I think it's a tale as old as fandom itself, right? Like no team wants to believe that they are going to match expectations. And that's why we're excited for this year. Everyone wants to exceed expectations. And when you get a glimmer of that, it becomes really hard to hold that at bay and say, no, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. So, I get it. I think we're not immune from it either. So I think we're getting better. I asked this earlier of you. I said, how do you be a fan of a fourth place team? And I think we're getting better at that, of not just assuming every year that this is our time to return to top three, our rightful place amongst the top three and only relevant LCS teams. But it's, it just takes some time. So we'll get there. We'll have another chance at it this split. We'll have to figure out what the narratives are so that we can try and inoculate ourselves.
Yeah. So And in our chat right now, there's a few comments talking about the Medios and Cody Sun thing, about how those players kind of fed into the narrative. And that's, I think, where I'm going next. Because look, here's the thing. Players in the League of Legends space know how to control and use the narrative way better than teams do. Now, players are also at a significant advantage over teams because they have this automatic buy-in from fans. Fans side with players, which is cool. If you want that, if you that's the way you approach it, that's awesome. Like, cool. Players are super important. Players are stars. Players give you those great stories, right? It's much harder for a team to do that consistently than it is for a star player to do that consistently. So I get it. All right. So everything I'm about to say, know that I get it, and I don't think you're wrong for being a fan of the player and prioritizing that. Okay. The problem is when we as fans are unable to see when we are obviously being manipulated by the player narrative. Okay. And this has been most prevalent for us in the case of Damonte. Now, I don't think that Damonte has actively done this year. I can't point to any specific, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if I fought hard, I could think of something, but nothing jumps to mind of like an instance of Damonte like specifically doing something to set up the story in a more favorable light for him. Unlike, say, a Medios, who can kick rocks. But what Damonte has done over the years is built very, very dedicated fans, which is awesome. Again, good for him. He has some players like light a fan base on fire for whatever reason. And I'm sorry, in Damonte's case, I don't understand why, other than he seems to be like a fun guy, you know? And so I don't fault him for that. But he has definite fan buy-in to a fault on the side of the fans, at least. I've encountered this throughout the split. Every time something happens regarding mid lane, there will be someone who comes in to my mentions and talks about how everything would be better if Damonte was still the mid laner. We've talked on this show ad nauseum about how, you know what, there just isn't that big of a difference between Damonte and Ryoma. Mm-hmm. Each of them has a slightly different, like, intangible value. And in some situations, it's better to have Damonte, and in some situations, it's better to have Ryoma. And that just is what it is, okay? But the narrative around Damonte just makes that a non-starter for so many of his dedicated fans. And this is where it becomes a problem, because when you are not updating your model in your head about all the things that are going on, it stops being like a fandom and it starts sounding like a freaking cult. You know, where it's like Damonte basically, and I don't fault him for this, but Damonte has kind of built up this like cult of Damonte believers around him that are just like, no, everything is going to be great if Damonte is playing. Winner's Ward points out, similar to sneaky fans. That's exactly right. Sneaky fans, Medios is another one. All right. Players who are so outwardly likable and have that thing about them that people just don't think they can really do anything wrong. It's a problem to think that way. It really is. All right. What is the Damonte narrative over the years? He's NA's like domestic mid lane hope, right? He plays Kiana. Watch his Kiana, man. It's crazy. He's the team leader, and he's got the go button, and he's the best roaming mid. He roams all over the map and makes plays. Okay, this stuff hasn't really been borne out to be that true. There's always that start of truth to it, but it doesn't really hold in the big picture. So my plea tonight is for Damonte, not Damonte fans, but the Damonte Colts to take the blinders off a little bit about this, because we're about to have a lot of off-season conversations. Who should be the mid lane starter? And if the goal is we're trying to make worlds, guess what? It should not be Ryoma, and it should not be Damonte either.
Yeah.
That is just the reality here. And it's okay to be a fan of him. It really is. But how far are you going to take your belief in players, right? Matter of fact, that's a really good question. How far are you going to take your belief in players? Because other players don't seem to think the same as you if you're in the Damonte cult, right? Travis's tweet earlier today. So if you didn't see this, so I Will Dominate had this tweet that was basically talking about like 100T and Golden Guardians. This is the old Golden Guardians roster. I think he said something to the effect of like, they should have just let these players hang around on Golden Guardians and see what they turned into, right? I think that was the initial sentiment. And then Tim Sevenhusen said, like, it would be really interesting to see whether that core could have performed better with the Golden Guardians coaching staff instead of the 100T coaching staff. But then Travis jumped in and he said, I heard during the offseason the team was not, and this is the Golden Guardians. This is when those 4 players were still on Golden Guardians. I heard during the offseason the team wasn't interested in sticking together once they heard they couldn't get Licorice or an upgrade top. Okay? So the team, without just like a super awesome top lane upgrade for them, they did not want to remain together. Okay?
Right.
All right. So there's some kind of flag sent up there. Then here's the follow-up tweet from Travis. There was also a rumor that the 3, meaning FBI, Huhi, and Closer, wanted a different mid, but couldn't find a better NA option. Mm-hmm. Huhi wasn't under contract and was going to leave regardless without a Licorice or equivalent. So then the question just becomes, do you force FBI and Closer to stay with a roster they're unhappy with, or sell contracts and reboot? So look, Travis seems to me to be pretty careful with like the rumor reporting, you know, as opposed to say a Skeleton who openly tells you all this is rumors, stuff that I've heard someone saying. I don't think that necessarily means this is going to happen, but this is being thrown out as a rumor. That's all Skeleton does. He makes that very clear. So if you
disclaimer,
right, it's a disclaimer on there. And if you don't understand that, that's on you. That's not on Skeleton. But Travis, I think, is someone who tries to make these reports about rumors only when he's pretty sure that they're legit. So if you believe Travis about this, then and you believe players, then this is telling you that Damonte was not the choice of the players to play around. Okay? Mm-hmm. Which is corroborated by everything that we've heard over the past few weeks about the switch. Right? Where, hey, the players were really involved in that decision to bench Damonte and put Ryoma in. So
yeah, it was Anero who said that, right? Like he was the one who said those players would have made it known if they didn't want that to happen, or like they would have made their opinion clear. It
was said several times. It was said by FBI in an interview, and it was also said by I think even Papa alluded to that in his interview with Travis. So that's like a thing, right? So my original question this has been a very long Cole rant, so sorry. But the question I was asking was, how far are you going to take your I believe players thing?
Right.
Because if you believe the players talking about this, the players are telling you they don't think he's the mid laner, right? they don't want to play around him. And there's a few instances where or at least 2 instances, I should be more precise. There's at least 2 instances where they actively decided, hey, we don't want to play with Damonte. Okay.
Right.
So if you are a Damonte fan, more power to you. That's cool. Seems like a likable dude. But you have to take that into account. You just can't dodge that anymore. So stop tweeting me about it. Like, to me, this has already been decided. You know what I mean? I don't see any other way around it. And again, I don't think Ryoma is demonstrably better than him. All right. But the players want him in. And the coaching staff wants him in. And that matters.
Yeah. I'll go one step further. I think that on some of the key champions, the control mages we talked about, I do think that Ryoma looks better. So, you could call it a trade-off. You could call it a 1-for-1 or, whatever you want to say. But I think that there are definitely things that Ryoma does that are better than Damonte. So then I think in my mind, it just comes back to the question you put out there, which is, if your goal is to make worlds, are either of these players the ones who seem like a Sherlock to get you that spot? That's where I think we're at.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that, right?
Yeah. So let's do this, because we've gone on longer than we kind of intended here. We've got a lot of listener takes.
Yeah.
Let's save them for the next pod, when we are going to talk more off-season stuff and more like, here's where we think we are with the team, here's where we think we are with roster moves, all that kind of stuff. Let's save these and kind of bundle those into here. We'll give you a chance to update them. We pulled, I think, like a dozen of them, so there's a lot. But
yep.
And I think like a lot of these we kind of answered along the way too. So we'll revisit all these conversations later. There's one listener take though that I do want to read. And that is from none other than Mama Flowers. Shout out Mama Flowers. A very prominent 100T fan who says, I know, and she tweeted this after the series, right? I know how bad I wanted this, and I'm not even a player of the game, let alone the team. Sorry for the loss, guys. Ready for second split. Go Thieves. Good luck to the remaining teams. That is a mature fan.
is that the perfect response tweet?
It is. Now, it may not make you feel any better, because you may want to vent. You may want to talk about your frustrations. And look, everybody, you have a right to your frustrations. All right. You have the right to go and say, man, I think this was bad and here's why. All right. Mm-hmm. So if that's your thing, then go for it. Just don't be a jerk about it. It's the only thing. And Mama Flowers is as far away from being a jerk than you could ever be. So shout out to her. Especially for keeping the focus on supporting the team. I know that like the way things have gone for the past 2.5, 3 years have made it hard to keep that in mind. But ultimately we are fans, right? We're here by choice. So if we're going to be fans, we're going to support the team. We're going to do what we can to do that. Are we going to have disagreements along the way? Heck yes, we are. All right. And if being a 100T fan has taught me anything, I can tell you there are going to be some off-season roster moves that I am going to hate. All right? I just know I will. Whether that's before the summer, probably not, or before 2022. So we'll talk about those. But, what we're going to do is we're still going to be nice. We're not going to be toxic.
Be like Kind Boy.
It's like the 100. Yeah, be like Kind Boy. It's like the 100 talk creed. All right? Let's set ourselves apart by not being toxic, not going crazy, not getting blinded by narratives, or at least being able to reevaluate narratives as the time passes so we can tell which parts of them are true and which parts are not. Mama Flowers, thank you for showing us the way.
Be like Mama Flowers. Be like Kind Boy.
Be like Mama Flowers. All right, so we'll wrap up. Guys. Oh, no, we got to talk apparel. Okay. We do, because the apparel thing just happened today. We do have to talk about this. And it's going on sale Saturday, I believe, right? The 10th? That's, I think, the Saturday. Okay, so hit on that quick. Jordan, I've been talking for like 30 minutes straight, so I'm very sorry. Let me let you have a second here on apparel.
Okay. Although I know you're kind of the apparel guy, so I want to make sure you have your chance to say your thing.
Everyone's sick of me.
Okay, well, here's what I'll say about the apparel. I feel like there is a lot of similarities. Where it's kind of like we're getting the essentials. We're getting a peek of what the essentials are. This drop has some of them. There is hoodie. There is sweatpant. There is sweat short. There is long sleeve tee. There's a new crew, so that's cool. But a lot of these things are showing back up in different formats. So I think my first general reaction is, for those who have been around for a lot of drops, it probably feels like there are pieces here which you don't have a burning urge to add to your own 100 Thieves collection, either because you've passed on it intentionally once and this doesn't scratch a different itch for you, or you saw it the first time, loved it, got it, and now you have it and you don't need it in a different color or a slightly different format. So that's the first thing I'll say. I think that's fine. I don't want every drop to have 100 different pieces that are wildly disparate. I think it's good to have some consistency, kind of get people used to it. Because if you're a new fan, you look at this shirt, right, and you say, I would love just a plain long sleeve that I could wear. There it is. It's there for you. And if you have this shirt, you don't need a new one. Great. So that's fine. That's not a criticism. That's just kind of how I know that some people are feeling about seeing some things come back. There's still part of me that is hungry for, I'm going to go back to my favorite drop, numbers collection. I know that that's not a popular or commonly held view.
No, it's not.
But I just feel like the things in that collection were unique, whether you like them or not. They were unique. It was very visually kind of striking, in my opinion,
and cohesive.
And partly because it wasn't as loud as some of the past stuff. So I wear that stuff all the time. It's I think you made the point when it dropped. It's very wearable. And I do wear it often. So that's how I feel in general. I think so far as like the imagery, the graphics, I think it's cool. It's a different, we haven't gone there yet. It's got a little bit of the digital space motif and feel, and that's kind of cool. I will say it feels a little bit of a retrod of the no camping styling on the font. Feels like they're rolling that back out a little bit.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't feel like it's pushing the boundaries to me. But I think that I would rather have this kind of drop than like a jam collection drop, which felt loud for loudness sake. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. And the other thing about the jam collection for me was just like, it did not feel like a collection. It felt like some pieces that were the same color, and like some stuff that was like designs they didn't decide to go with in previous drops that they're kind of bringing back and rehashing. That's what the jam collection felt like to me. So it was probably my least liked collection. So when I looked at is Enter Infinity, is that what it's called? Enter Infinity?
Seems right.
Or the Infinity collection or something like that. I think it's Enter Infinity. You can't fault it for not being cohesive, right? To me, the pieces make sense together. They complement each other. So I don't have like problems on that end. I do definitely see the criticism of like, hey, a lot of this is new colorways of stuff that we already have. I don't think that's bad. I can see if you don't like it and you're not inspired by it, I can see that as a totally valid criticism. So, if that's how it hits you, that's how it hits you. And I'm not going to be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. It's not like that at all. But again, so not to do this all the time, but the comparison is very obvious and has been invoked by not only people who talk about it, but 100 Thieves themselves. But the comparison with Supreme, I mean, how many box logo shirts are you going to buy? Right? It's like just a new color. That's all that matters. It's like those things sell. It's the same thing in new colors every time, and it goes out in like 2 seconds. Right? What you mentioned earlier is kind of important, that like 100 T fandom is not just you, right? It's an evolving group of fans. For instance, we haven't had that many collections since the 2 Hype crew joined. And people listening to this podcast probably aren't really too hype fans, but you wouldn't know then that they actually have a very large following and it has grown very fast. And those people coming into the org, they might not have some stuff like this. They want to see that. You always want to have these options that are, that have the logo on there, that feel like the same stuff that other fans have. Like, you want that. That is an essential part of it. And so there, in my opinion, there needs to be an amount of clothing that is like that. That is new colors of the same things, or sometimes they reissue something. Like, no one was complaining when they reissued the cream hoodie, right? No one complained about that because it was awesome. That needs to happen. So there's that piece. And then there's the, what else are we doing? What's next? What's the inspiration? I don't know how many people saw the new water bottles. There's 3 Nalgene bottles in this drop. They're all like, so you guys see me drink out of this one from the No Camping collection all the time. I also have this one from the No Camping collection. They're more of this wave, right? But they're way different. They're like fully colored bottles with the design on them like this. I think the bottles are cool, right? They've got freaking flashlights. Speaking of Supreme, putting, 100 Thieves branding on kind of like household items and stuff. That's a Supreme move, right? And you got to have a flashlight, so you might as well have one that says 100 Thieves on it. That's how I'm looking at it, right? I think it's a little weird, but it's kind of fun, right? So I don't fault that at all. So when it comes to the Infinity branding, I think that's like the thing to really evaluate. That's the thing to like, here's what's important about this collection, because we don't know anything about, say, like the quality of this drop. We don't know if they're using some of the same blanks that they've used before, which to me, I would guess that they are. The shorts look the same. The pants look the same. The hoodie looks like the red hoodie, the red hoodie from the Jam collection. That's what it looks like to me, but it's possible that it's a Jam collection hoodie. I haven't looked super closely at the pictures. I'm sorry, I said Jam collection. I meant No Camping. So my instinct is that it's the red hoodie from the Jam collection, but it could be the blank from the No Camping drop / LA Thieves, right? Could be that. So we don't know those questions yet. We can't really evaluate that yet. So we have to wait. So the design itself, I think, is like, it's okay. Some of the designs I really like. The back of the blue long sleeve, I think, has the coolest just individual graphic. A couple of the others are all right. None of the designs really, like, in the totality of it, I really love. Like the implementation of the Infinity branding is like, it's all right, but I always think it's like, oh, in combination with these colors, it would have been better. Or if you don't put it like right on the side of the pants, like maybe it's better. I don't know. That's a tough one, knowing what to do with pants. But the Infinity branding, I'm like kind of, it's all right. I like a couple of them. I don't like a couple of them. It does invoke the No Camping stuff for sure. And I think that's fine. I do think that's going to satisfy a lot of people who like the No Camping drop. So then I guess after that, it comes down to just the color selection. I actually like it. I really do. I like the color selection, but I'm not going to universally love every piece in every color, right? For instance, I like the yellow long sleeve tee a lot. I like the yellow and like the red lettering. To me, that's like a really good color combo for a long sleeve shirt. I do not want the yellow like pants, for instance, or the yellow hoodie. I'm not going full out on the yellow, right? But the long sleeve, I think, like looks cool and has like a certain thing to it. And then the black and blue stuff is new, right? I think a lot of people are going to like the black and blue. So overall, I guess what I'm saying is like, it's hard for me to point to flaws in the collection because I think that they are slowly responding to a lot of the suggestions and criticism of the fans. It is cohesive. It does offer a lot of color options, some which are brand new. It does offer some items that are really liked by people that own them, say the shorts, for instance. People who have the shorts, myself included, they tend to really like them.
Yeah.
And the hoodies are obviously, everyone loves hoodies. So it has that. It had a great presentation, right? Like I think the way the lookbook looks is really cool. It appears, in my guess, I saw them tweet out the mysterious graphic and something about entering the gateway or something like that. To me, that looks like an NFT sale. Like they're going to sell 8 pieces of art, digital art, in an NFT. That's what that looks like to me. I guess we'll find out more tomorrow. So they're like doing stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So while it's like, I don't love it, I think it's hard to pick real flaws out. Whereas the Jam collection, I had some like legitimate like gripes that I could easily see. So
right.
If I'm guessing a lot of people are kind of like me, where it's like not totally my cup of tea, but there are some pieces that I definitely like and want to get. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good place to be, you know, not everything is going to be a slam dunk every time, even though 100T has, in the early stages, a good track record. There's one glaring flaw though. So here's the bad. All right. Here's the thing I'll point out. We gotta move the logo from the center of the chest to the breast. Okay. Yep. It looks like a pajama shirt if you have the logo right there. All right. I wear them. All right. I wear them. But holy crap, it's so much better when it's on the breast instead of in the dead center of the chest. Guys, please let them know. Let them know. I may have told an unnamed staff member that I will give $20 per shirt extra just to move the logo over.
Yeah, the premium option.
If I could have one wish, it would just be to move that logo to the breast. I would like it so much more. If it's not a big graphic, a bigger graphic, you got to move it off. If a small graphic center to chest does not look as good as it could, guys, if you're listening, please just do something. Or just make it huge and like put it across the chest. Probably not the 100 Thieves thing, but whatever the design is. That's my piece on it. So I don't think overall, I don't think this is my favorite 100T collection, but I think it's solid and I think it has merit. And I get the slap a logo on it criticism. I get the rehash of older items criticism, but there you need to have an element of that when you're thinking about the fan base as a whole. All right. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm standing on it.
Fair.
Hit me on Discord if you want to talk about it more, by the way. I said a lot of things in the 100 Talk Discord today about that, especially when we were comparing the reissues to like things like Jordan's, by the way. So bring that up with me in the Discord, which I think Jordan is putting in chat right now. There he goes. Guys, that'll do it for tonight. Again, we will give a more off-season / roster / hey, how are the coaches doing? We didn't even really talk about the coaches today at all, and we were supposed to
talk about draft.
Yeah. But there's a lot to say there. So come back, talk with us again when we do this again, which is probably next week and it may be the week after. So somewhere in that neighborhood, and we'll have a more thorough discussion of that stuff. Until then, I guess we get to watch the finals this weekend in the Greek theater. They're in person for the finals at the Greek. Should be a good time. We'll have Rec League on Thursday.
As always.
And Jordan, I'm going to say it. I know we didn't talk about this before, but I'm going to say it. Okay. I believe, Ja willing, that we will have a COD based stream coming up later this week.
What?
All right. Yeah. So
we should do that.
Hang around, guys. As always, thanks for being here. And we love you and we miss you already.
Take care.
All right, it's raid time. Raid time. Raid time. Raid time. Raid time. Who are we raiding?
We got Kenny live. We got
Oh, poor Kenny.
low budget LCS is live. We got
Is Jay Leray
I don't think
on?
so.
Because that was awesome and I want to raid her back. No, we don't have that.
Yeah, she's offline.
Darkuth is live?
Oh, Darkuth.
All right, Darkuth it is.
Darkuth is live.
Community love. Everybody stick around for some actual Diamond Bard play.
You about to see some good Bard.
All right, we'll see you guys soon. Hang around for the raid.
Bye.
Can't wait till Rec League this week. We'll see you.